Today, we take a special look at some of the most violent fighters in UFC history. Bear in mind that this list includes a now retired KO artist as well. Stay tuned. In this video, we will discuss the top 10 violent fighters in UFC, so make sure to watch this video to the end. Now let's get right into the video. Number 1. Vitor Belfort. Fear is not a factor for Vitor Belfort. Even at the ripe age of 36, the Phenom is still swarming some of the best fighters in the world with blinding speed and smoldering power. His knack for finishing guys who usually don't get finished is not only a testament to his evolution as a fighter in today's new era of MMA, but also his unsullied grasp for violence. Like an incendiary bomb let loose in a phone booth, the Brazilian can jump all over an opponent from the first bell to the last. Not to mention the fact that he has seemingly polished his craft on the heels of memorable head kick knockouts in 2013. Number 2. Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler is simply a different animal. He's ruthless. Get it? The bottom line with Lawler is you know what you're going to get. As an opposing fighter looking into his eyes from across the cage, you know the guy is coming full blast. You know he's not going to stop until you're either unconscious or the world comes to an end. But even though fighters know that Lawler is going to throw unlawful leather for as long as it takes, there's no stopping him. His violence is simply too consistent. Like the sun rising in the east, Lawler is going to try to roll heads with every punch, kick, knee, and takedown he has. Number 3. Jorge Mashvidal. UFC 239 was a significant event in Jorge Mashvidal's career. The MMA veteran was coming off an impressive knockout win over Darren Till, which snapped his 2-fight losing skid. Gamebred was in for a tough test against former Bellator and welterweight champion Ben Askren. The former Olympic wrestler had an unbeaten record and was on the verge of earning a title shot. It was no secret what Funky's game plan would be against Mashvidal. He was going to use his wrestling to take the fight to the ground. But Mashvidal had other plans and wasted no time in finishing Askren. He charged at his opponent, and as Funky ducked his head for a takedown, Gamebred connected with a flying knee. Askren was immediately knocked out, and Mashvidal followed up with ground strikes. The fight lasted only 5 seconds and set the record for the fastest knockout in the promotion's history. Number 4. Yoel Romero. The Soldier of God is regarded by the vast majority of fans and experts alike as one of the most violent combatants not only in the MMA dominion, but also in the combat sports industry as a whole. Yoel Romero is a former Olympic silver medalist and is considered by many one of the best wrestlers to have ever competed in the UFC. He's well known for utilizing his grappling skills to get his foe to the mat, and from there onward, Romero's top control and ground and pound abilities are truly legendary. Furthermore, in case his opponents happen to possess excellent takedown defense, Romero is more than capable of striking with the best of them. More often than not, knocking elite strikers out with his technically precise punches, elbows, knees, and kicks. We ought to note here that Romero's punches and knees are generally regarded as his most dangerous weapons on the feet, as evidenced by his brutal KO wins against Luke Rockhold, punches, and Chris Weidman, knees, respectively. Number 5. Jeremy Stephens. From the combination of Jeremy Stephens moving back to throw the kick and Ronnie Mariano Bezerra moving into it, to the almost slow-motion fall into the cage after it connects, these knockout covers everything that needed to be classed as brutal. It even had some super necessary shots of an unconscious Bezerra at the end of it. Ronnie Mariano Bezerra, known as Ronnie Jason, was on an 8-fight winning streak heading into his fight with Stephens at UFC Fight Night 32 in Goiânia, Brazil. It's amazing he even entered the octagon again after what Stephens did to him. Bezerra fought 5 more times in the UFC, but the Brazilian was never the same. There aren't enough adjectives in the English language to describe this knockout. Just 40 seconds into the opening round, Stephens beautifully waited for Bezerra to throw his strike before launching a perfect right kick to his head. The Brazilian fell back onto the cage before eating one of the hardest follow-up punches you could probably find. The screwed-up face of the unconscious Bezerra was a scary aesthetic. It is without a doubt the most brutal knockout of Jeremy Stephens' career. Number 6. Michael Chandler. Chandler is one of the best Bellator fighters in history and the former UFC title challenger. Whenever you see Chandler on the card, you know that entertainment is guaranteed from start to finish. He is a hard matchup for anyone simply because of his aggressive approach and the freak power in both of his hands. He'd start swinging power shots and chasing his opponent from the onset of the first second, and it'd be difficult to shake him off. In his career, he has left nothing but carnage in just about every fight he stepped in to compete. He is one of those fighters who throw every strike with full force, without caring much about the gas tank or counterattacks. Whether it's a kick, punch, or entry for a takedown, Chandler is very explosive and always pushing for a finish. In some cases, this approach cost him a better result, like the fight he lost against Justin Gaethje. But on the other side, it also brought him a lot of success, like against Dan Hooker and Tony Ferguson. Number 7. Cain Velasquez. Cain Velasquez is regarded by many as one of the most violent fighters in combat sports history. His trilogy fight against Junior Dos Santos at UFC 166 in Houston, Texas, saw him finish a bloodied-up GDS in the 5th and final round of their fight. Furthermore, not many could have forgotten his bloody dismantling of Antonio Bigfoot Silva in their first fight at UFC 146. Now that fight truly resembled something that was straight out of a horror movie, with Velasquez relentlessly attacking Silva, and the latter lying in a pool of his blood. Number 8. Dan Henderson. Holding the honor of being the last man to defeat Fedor Emelianenko, Dan Henderson is no doubt one of the most brutal fighters ever. He began his career simply as a wrestler, but he made his name known based on one attack, the H-bomb. It's a disservice to just call the punch an overhand right. The punch is so devastating that even in the twilight of his career, it is still a danger for any fighter on earth. The pinnacle of Dan Henderson's brutality came at UFC 100 when, after shutting Michael Bisping's lights off with an H-bomb, he dropped a forearm that rattled Bisping's ancestors due to its power. He may be a one-trick pony at this point of his career, but what a hell of a trick it is. Number 9. Francis Ngannou. Whenever you see Ngannou on the UFC card, you know that you are about to see violence and people flying across the cage unconscious. Ngannou is, by far, the hardest hitter the world has ever seen. And if you combine this with his aggressive style, you get why Ngannou is the most feared man on the planet. From the way he lifted Alistair Overeem off the ground with a vicious uppercut to the way he recklessly charged at Rozenstruik with a barrage of punches, Ngannou is a terrifying human being inside the octagon. He is known as an MMA fighter who doesn't have the most technical striking skills, but throughout his career, he managed to make up for the lack of technique with sheer power and aggression. No matter what happens in a fight, Ngannou is always one punch away from winning the fight, and that's why you can never count him out. His knockouts over Brock Lesnar and Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira are brutal enough, but his second and third fights with former champ Junior Dos Santos are the ones you want to scare your friends with. If you look up bloodbath in a dictionary, you would find a picture of a wounded and concussed Dos Santos standing up only because Velasquez's punches are keeping him propped up on the fence. The pace and power of Velasquez will keep them near the top of this list for years to come. Number 10. Antony Johnson. Anthony "Rumble" Johnson may very well be one of the scariest fighters to have ever graced the UFC's famed octagon. The terrifyingly powerful former MMA fighter had God-given knockout power in his strikes and could render his foes unconscious with punches, elbows, kicks, knees, and even by simply slamming them to the mat. After all, who could forget Johnson's fight with current Bellator light heavyweight champion Ryan Bader, as the two stalwarts locked horns in the UFC, only for Rumble to slam the latter's head into the mat, daze him, and knock him out with a few well-placed ground strikes. Johnson's most deadly attribute was his punching power, which was further amplified by his excellent boxing skills. Love him or hate him, he'll forever be remembered as one of the most violent fighters in UFC history. So hopefully you did enjoy the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for more videos like this one. We will see you in the next video. Thank you.